In the last video, I covered the installation of my new Clearview CV1800 dust collector. A link to that video is in the description, as well as the website article for this video. Be sure to check that out. In this video, I'll cover the dust collection ducting. Now first, I used SketchUp to create a model of my shop and a rough outline for the ducting, and I shopped around locally to find the least expensive 6-inch PVC, which for me ended up being SDR35 pipe. That may or may not be the case for your location, so be sure to compare prices and shop around. The majority of the ducting is repetition, so I won't cover every single detail, but everything was cut and dry fit until I knew that that particular section was complete. The blast gates I'm using are recommended by Bill Pence and are the 6-inch self-cleaning aluminum gates from Lee Valley. The gates fit snugly inside the pipe and are attached with a small amount of clear silicone. All of the joints that had access all the way around were sealed with a bead of silicone. All of the fitting to fitting joints were sealed with a layer of foil tape, and all of the pipe to fitting joints along the wall, where I wasn't able to get a caulking gun to use silicone, I sealed those with foil tape. My friend Sean Stone from Stone & Sons Workshop offered to help out with some of the ducting, so I took him up on the offer. Having an extra set of hands and also an extra 8-foot ladder was really helpful with the overhead portion. My original idea was to come from the top down to connect the miter saw station, but due to the fact that my miter saw is just ridiculously long in the front to back direction, there was just no room for the pipe on the back side. So instead, I went with my old setup of running the pipe against the side wall and the back wall below the miter saw station and coming up from below to connect to the miter saw station. On the bottom of the miter saw station, I had to swap out the previous 4-inch port for a 6-inch port, and I found that a regular 6-inch HVAC takeoff is the least expensive route to make your own 6-inch dust port. After reducing its height, I attached the hose to it and then secured it to the bottom of the dust box with a few screws. And inside the dust box, I used a router with a flush trim bit to open the 4-inch hole to the full size of the 6-inch takeoff. And that ended up being a lot easier than I thought it would be, and it turned out great. So I turned the camera off so I could focus on getting the vast majority of this stuff done so I could actually work in here. I'm getting a little anxious to get back to work. But anyway, I've got all the tools hooked up except the jointer, and I figured I'd show you how I'm going to make a dust port for it, because I use the exact same process to make a dust port for the miter saw, and that's a little difficult to show because of its hidden location underneath the miter saw. So same process except wide out in the open. All I have to do is hook the jointer up and the whole system will be up and running. And making this particular port requires the use of a couple of the other tools, so I might as well see how the dust collection is working while I make this thing. Alright, so I haven't moved anything just yet. I made the cut and I wanted to see exactly how much dust is coming through. And there is, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but there's just a little bit of dust. Focus. There's a little bit of dust right there, not much at all. And it's hard to pick up, but anyway, dust collection is much improved at the table saw. I am still using the factory overarm guard with the dust collection built in, but I'm not using the actual arm that comes over here, simply because I didn't really have a convenient way to get rid of it when it's not in use. This way, I can just disconnect this if I need to make some non-through cuts. and I have it suspended up here at the top with a piece of, it's hard to do this one-handed, suspended up here at the top with a piece of fishing line, so it's not really visible, but it still gets it out of the way really easily, and I can make some non-through cuts. And when I'm ready to use it again, just hook it back up. Now to the miter saw. Now it's worth noting that before I made the dust collector upgrade, I put these two friction fit wings in here, and these can easily be removed if I need to make an angled cut. But like I said, they're friction fit, and if that becomes a nuisance removing these, then I can put some hinges on them and all that stuff. But basically, this has increased the efficiency with the last dust collector. What it did is it more or less isolated the suction closer to where the blade is and promoted more dust going through the back rather than a little bit of it spewing out. And I've already messed with this, and I can tell you it's fantastic with the new dust collection. But I just want to go ahead and show you. I've got to make this one cut for the jointer port. All right, so I don't know if it picked up on camera, but there's a lot of really light blue pieces. Let's see if I can't get them. These lighter blue pieces were stuck in the saw from when I was cutting the pipe. So it's all the small stuff is, of course, from the plywood, but not too bad for that length of a cut. And obviously, the further you get away from the fence of the saw, the less effective this particular style dust collection is going to be. But overall, a massive, massive improvement from the last setup. And this was the worst offender for creating airborne dust in the shop. And it is much more adequate, much more friendly to use anyway. All right, so I don't know how many cuts that was, but it was a lot. And let's see. Got a little bit of dust down here, a little bit more of that blue stuff from that pipe. I guess I'll be finding some of that piece of pipe every now and then for a while until it gets out of the system. But man, that was a lot of cuts for just that little amount of dust to be showing up on the saw. Very much improved. Real quick, I wanted to show that there is just a little bit of dust over here too. And check the other side. Just a little bit. The screws for the factory port aren't that long, so I had to counterbore the front side as well as counterbore the back side because these stick out proud of the surface by just a little bit. And also down here at the bottom, this bottom ramp piece sticks out just a little bit. So I made a really fast barbaric dado at the workbench with a chisel. It's ugly, but it only took me like 30 seconds just to get the job done, and no one will ever see it. So if you don't tell anybody, then it'll be our little secret. And I want to test fit this before I cut that center hole just to make sure everything's lining up properly.
Flawless victory.
In just a second, I'll run through the entire system and do a brief overview, but I wanted to test out the planer really quick, and for the most part, it works just fine. You can see on the camera, even from here, that there are some larger pieces of debris on the back, on the infeed side of the table. The outfeed side is pretty much clean, but this is larger stuff. This isn't really the dangerous stuff that you want to be sucking up. So I think that this extra 4-inch port over here will leave an opportunity for some type of shroud over here in the front, some custom setup to collect all this stuff if necessary. But regardless, the dust collection on this works great, and there is also room for improvement. So with that being said, the whole setup is complete. It is functional, the shop is clean, and I'm ready to start on a new project. But like I said, really quick, let me give you a rundown on the entire system. Right out of the collector is a 5-foot section of straight pipe to reduce turbulence inside the collector, and then it Ys down to the perimeter branch, and then this Y goes to the bandsaw, the straight pipe all the way down goes to the jointer, and then this Y over here goes to the miter saw. And I wanted to put the blast gates as close to the main section as possible, that way you're not straining the system by putting pressure on a long section of pipe that is not even being used, such as if I put the blast gate all the way at the miter saw, then it doesn't really, it's not going to be as effective as it would if the blast gates are closer to the main section. So at the bandsaw, right after the blast gate, I have a true 6-inch to dual 4Y adapter, and 2 pieces of flex hose. This gray one goes to the back side of the bandsaw, which I've already discussed this while talking about this bandsaw. That port down there at the bottom is, it's not a good location at all for this particular saw. However, just setting it right there will get me up and running, and I can work on something in the near future. Previously, I had a dedicated shop vac for this, and I just had a hose zip tied to the bottom side of the table where the blade goes through, and it worked out pretty well. So I want to do the exact same thing with this 4-inch hose, and it'll run around the other side and attach to the bottom door. Now the blue hose is a Rockler Dust Right hose, and it's the 28-foot hose. It's expandable, and the reason I wanted it right here is because I also want to make a top-down arm, I guess, for the bandsaw dust collection, and have it attached to this blade guard pillar, and that will just allow me to hook the blue hose into this and have top and bottom dust collection here at the bandsaw. I'll get to that shortly, hopefully. But this blue hose is also good for cleaning up the shop. I've got some attachments to vacuum up the shop rather than sweep stuff up, because a broom stirs up dust, and I haven't really used a broom much often at all. I'd prefer to vacuum up instead of sweeping up. So that's this particular area. This blue hose will reach everywhere in my shop with no problems, and it's much more convenient than rolling around my shop vac and cyclone cart that's over there. The hose going to the jointer is a little bit longer than what I wanted it to be, but that's okay because it gives me a little bit of room if I need to move this jointer out here a little bit more into this hallway to joint long stuff. So it gives me a little bit of wiggle room there. And then, of course, this blast gate goes to the miter saw station. On the top side of the original Y, we have a section of straight pipe that goes to a 90-degree corner. Now, this isn't it's not an abrupt 90-degree corner. It's always best to have 2 45-degree fittings to make a 90-degree turn rather than a standard 90-degree fitting, because a 90-degree fitting really reduces airflow. But this is a 90-degree sweep, which has a much larger radius and helps the transition, which it's about the same as if you put 2 45-degree elbows together. It's about that same radius. So that's what I went, save a little bit of money. And then this pipe is horizontal over to the island, and on the top side I have a Y going to a cap, which allows for future expansion. Totally wasn't going to do that, and then Sean Stone, as he was helping me put this stuff up, suggested you know, that really wouldn't hurt if you put that there, just put a cap on it. So it made a lot of sense. That's what we did. Anyway, coming down from it, we've got a Y going to the table saw and then also the planer. Now, on the planer side, I have another one of those 6-inch to dual 4 Y adapters. And on one side, we have the flex hose going to the planer. The other side is open and allows for future expansion, and nothing comes out of it that I could find with the dust collector running. On this side, we have pipe going to the table saw. I have a 6-inch with a 4-inch Y going to the overarm. Now, this is my only concern with this entire system. I want to have a full 6-inch diameter amount of airflow flowing through the entire system at all times to allow better airflow through the collector, to not starve the collector, I guess is what you should say. And this fitting is it's a lot more of a reduction than I want for a true 4-inch, because down here it reduces to a true 4-inch, which goes to the back side of the saw in the factory dust collection port. This table saw that I'm using has a really nice dust shroud over the blade to catch a lot of the dust inside the cabinet, as well as one over the top of the blade, and combined they work great. My cut that I just made showed how well it works. However, this is the biggest strain on the system, is reducing this to a 4, so I don't have a true dual 4-inch amount of airflow flowing through this section of pipe. I've got 4-inch down there and then this restriction here. I don't know how that's going to work in the long run, but this does give me the opportunity to later upgrade to a true 4-inch over the blade dust collection system if I choose to do so. I already put a piece of pipe in place to mock up and see how it would work, and looks like it'll work just fine. So there's room for improvement here if necessary. So finally, the dust collection upgrade is pretty much complete. There are a few things that I want to tweak, but other than that, I'm very, very, very pleased with the results. It is a tremendous upgrade, and I do have a more permanent long-term solution for any dust collection needs that I have in this particular shop, as well as the capacity to handle a larger shop if I do happen to move later on down the road and acquire more tools, which is always fun to think about. But anyway, I'm ready to get back to work, ready to start on the next project. So if you'd like more information, be sure to check out the article for this video. If this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and subscribe to my second channel, JBates2, for a lot more content and more behind the scenes type stuff. You guys take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.